What do you all see?
Your screen.
I see your
Desktop.
screen, the desktop screen.
Desktop? Oh, okay.
There we go.
Oh, great.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wisconsin Library Association's 2021 Library Legislative Day. I think our unofficial theme for this year could be what a difference a year makes. It's not uncommon for an MC to begin with those words, and often there's a ripple of chuckles through the audience as they connect it to one or two other events that happened through the year. We've had so many that I don't think I'll ever hear that introduction again in the same way or think about it in the same way. It was only 1 year ago that we were at the Concourse Hotel. We are enjoying the flattering words of Superintendent Carolyn Stanford Taylor, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, and then an array of panelists. And most importantly, we were enjoying a continental breakfast. And we were given that the charge yeah, thanks. No, it's only a 2-hour program. This should be enough. Thank you. Yep. Oh yeah, 3 cubes. It's always 3 cubes. We'll talk about this later. Your evaluation is at 2. So last year we were given the charge of talking to our legislators and letting them know what it is that we did the previous year and thanking them for the funds to set them up for this year when we would come back and hopefully ask for more funding to do even more good. What a difference a year makes. It was only a month later at last year's Library Legislative Day that many of us made the toughest decision that we had to in our professional careers. And that was closing the front doors to our libraries, taking a pause. And in that vein, I wanna just take a pause here so that we can reflect on the last year. Any of those that we have lost in our personal lives, patrons that have been part of our professional lives, and anybody else in the community. Thank you. After that short pause last spring, we stepped back, we assessed what we were doing, but then we got right back to work. We couldn't open our physical doors right away, but we certainly opened our digital doors, and we provided Wi-Fi access to those that came to our building but could not at the time get in. And in the interim, we also did not pause in professional development, construction projects, RFID projects, and other planning that we were able to take advantage so that when we were again open, we would be able to continue to provide the excellent service that we're known for. Kind of our signature became the curbside service, and then that grew and that expanded. And for many of us, that's going to continue. And it will be a way to remember what happened all during the last year and how we rallied together. Many of us then were able to open safely in June, some were not, but many were able to open safely in June, and even programming began in earnest in July or August. And as you know, many of the members of your community, in particular the families that came into those meetings, sometimes, or programs, sometimes you'd only have one family or even a couple, and you provided an absolutely vital service for them. And now, of course, hopefully, we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and that 1 year from now, we'll be able to talk about all the great things that we did in 2021. I want to, before we hear from some others this morning, I just want to say that it's very cold out there. In the last few years, we've had I think an ice storm that cut our attendance in half. We've had cold weather and all the rest. So this virtual legislative day, hopefully only this year, but it is awful cold out there, and I would like everyone somewhere along the line this morning is to go into chat, say your city or type your city and what the temperature is. I'm here at Beloit Public Library. I'm Nick Damascus, by the way, the director of Beloit Public Library. And we're at about 3 degrees. So do tell us in the chat what the temperature is in your area. I know that as we go north, it gets much colder. I looked. I want to thank the WLA staff, Plumer Lovelace, Tom Clement, and Hannah Bunting in particular for all the coordination and the technology and the logistics for getting this meeting together and going. And with that, I'm going to pause and turn it over to Plumer Lovelace, our WLA Executive Director.
Thanks, Nick. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Library Legislative Day. I want to thank all of you for carving out time in your schedules to be here today and to especially be here virtually. We recognize that we've had to innovate and be creative this year with trying to schedule our usual event. So I want to take a moment to thank all of you for your patience with us, because we know that there was a learning curve and some challenges with trying to figure out how we actually have our meetings this year. So we really appreciate your patience with us. We have a good turnout this year. We had 164 people who registered for this event. So I really appreciate the enthusiasm. Also, I want to take a moment to say thank you to the volunteers that stepped up at the last minute to help us monitor the meetings that will take place during the week. We had a little bit larger number of meetings to schedule than we had originally thought, and so we needed to do an emergency call for volunteers. And as always, the WLA members stepped up and agreed to help us this week. Now, for all of you who really look forward to driving through that snow and that ice to get to Library Legislative Day, and of course, the excitement of trying to find the restrooms in the Capitol, we'll do everything that we can to bring all of that excitement back to you next year. So all kidding aside, I truly appreciate your willingness this year to ensure that libraries have a presence during the budgeting process. Our effort to sustain funding for libraries, it can't stop during a pandemic. As Steve always reminds us, we have to have a seat at the table. So a couple of recommendations for your upcoming meetings. First, assume that you're going into a welcoming environment. Your budget team has been meeting with people for approximately 4 months. And those meetings have always been very, very positive. You all are lovingly referred to as the library people at the Capitol. And our legislators really, truly look forward to meeting with you. So just know that you're going into a very welcoming environment. Secondly, expect the unexpected. Of course, trying to set up your web conferences is very much like your cell phones, and you get dropped calls. Don't panic. And Jim Ramsey will talk a little bit more about how to deal with emergencies later on in the program, but just know that something can always happen because it is technology. And finally, remember the focus on your stories. When we ask legislators, what's the most effective messaging that our members can provide when they come to visit you? And they always say the same thing. Please have them share their stories. We love their stories. So with that, I want to say thank you again and good luck on your meetings today.
Thank you, Plumer. And let's not let the virtual environment prevent us from applauding our WLA Executive Director. And next, I would ask Sherry Machonis, the WLA President, to make a few remarks.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning on this very cold morning. It's -13 way up here at the tippy top of the state. So it's like a heat wave compared to the past couple days up here. So I do want to take a quick second to thank Jim Ramsey, who you will hear from later, for all of his hard work this year and in past years to make these appointments. This year was a huge challenge with us being virtual. We couldn't have done it without him, and Chris Adams went. Both of them are on our Library Development and Legislation Committee, LDNL. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't do this without you. Also, I wanted to take a moment and honor the Ho-Chunk Nation. We would like to recognize that the Capitol, which we would all be in if this was a normal year, inhabits the land of the Ho-Chunk. And so please take a moment and honor and celebrate the ancestral Ho-Chunk land and all of the sacred lands of all 12 First Nations that are within the boundaries of Wisconsin. It's very important to honor our ancestors. So thank you. Putting on my other hat other than president, I am your federal coordinator on legislative issues. And so I just want to give you a quick little brief update on one legislation that is happening right now. A couple weeks ago, there was a bill introduced, the Build America's Libraries Act by Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. And so this is gaining traction, and you will see an alert later today from me to take action on this. The legislation would provide $5 billion in funding to repair, modernize, and construct library facilities in underserved and marginalized communities. So this is in the Senate, and so I'm please contact Senator Baldwin and Johnson on this bill. I think it could do just amazing things, and $5 billion is a lot to ask for. So we're super excited about that and what it could do for our community. So with that, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it back to Nick.
Thank you, Sherry. Next, we have a keynote address, someone who's become very close to us, and it is Superintendent Carolyn Stanford Taylor. And the election is today, so this is kind of her farewell, certainly to us, as she moves into retirement or other endeavors. I want to thank Wendy Stanislavski. She is her executive staff assistant, and for several years now, she has been absolutely wonderful to work with and coordinating these appearances by the superintendent. Of course, Kurt Kiefer, Ben Miller, Allison Hyam, and all the rest of the DPI staff, all the work that they do in helping us work with the superintendent and all the different agencies. And so I'll just give a quick little introduction. Carolyn Stanford Taylor began as a classroom teacher and then principal in the Madison School District. In 2001, she joined the DPI, serving as the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division for Learning Support, and that was a position she held for over 17 years. After 4 decades, she was named superintendent in 2019 by Governor Evers. She and her husband Larry have 5 children, all public school graduates, 2 of whom are public school educators. Her work with and for children extends beyond her professional career through service with her church and her community. So let's give Carolyn Stanford Taylor a huge Legislative Day welcome.
Good morning. It's wonderful to join all of you today. I understand our need to meet virtually, but want you to know my preference would be to meet with you in person, especially since this will be my last time with you as State Superintendent. I also want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude for the role that libraries played in the shaping of who I am as an individual. Wisconsin's libraries are the life and livelihood of our communities. Thank you to the WLA for sponsoring the Library Legislative Day and your continued support for improving and promoting library services for Wisconsin's communities. And a special thank you to our librarians and staff who connect our communities to invaluable library resources. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed us in ways we couldn't have imagined prior to 2020, but has also highlighted the crucial role of our libraries. As buildings throughout our state closed, libraries adapted to using quarantine procedures and curbside pickup to provide physical materials to Wisconsin residents. While you and your staff have been working so tirelessly to meet the needs of local communities, DPI staff have been working hard to provide statewide leadership, guidance, and support to complement your efforts. I'm proud of the department's coordination and distribution of CARES Act funds to libraries. These funds help libraries to enhance remote learning and serve as a community hub for accessing information by expanding and strengthening Wi-Fi signals outside libraries. Strengthening Wi-Fi signals was a critical step in helping to bridge the digital access gap for many Wisconsinites and reinforce the important role of Wisconsin's libraries in providing equitable and inclusive services. As we move forward into 2021, the DPI's Library Services team will continue to strengthen our relationships with local schools, organizations, and citizens. One way in which we're enhancing relationships is through Project Ready, a free online curriculum for library staff covering topics of race, equity, and access. We're pleased that over 120 school library staff and public library youth services staff applied to take part in the virtual learning cohort, which began in January. As state superintendent, I pledge to continue to stress how important the relationship is between the department, our library systems, and libraries across the state. I encourage you at the local system and state levels to continue making connections and building strong partnerships. Let me close by saying how proud I am of the accomplishments of our Wisconsin libraries. I encourage you to continue sharing your voices and experiences. It is important for legislators to understand the value of libraries to communities throughout Wisconsin. Thank you for all you do to make libraries a great place for Wisconsin students and families. Be well.
Thank you, Superintendent Stanford Taylor. I can tell you that she was deeply disappointed that she could not be with us this last year, or I mean today in her last year as superintendent. But she's been a great advocate and supporter for us, and we are most appreciative. She has big shoes to fill in with the next superintendent. She mentioned DPI staff keeping us all informed, and I want to give a special shout out. Even though a year ago doesn't seem that long ago, it also, in some ways, it also seems a distant memory in others. And I remember last spring, after we had closed, that one individual kept us well informed and knitted all the libraries across Wisconsin together with the information that we needed, and that is Shannon Schultz with the Department of Public Instruction. So a special shout out to her. Send her emails, send your good vibes, whatever it is, her way, because last spring, I think it really was her that kept us all communicating together where we were at any moment, in our being closed, being open, is it safe? A lot of the PPE kinds of questions, and certainly the executive orders, et cetera. And without Shannon, I think we would have been in a much less confident position when it came time to reopen. As the superintendent said, telling our stories. She said, sharing your voices and your experiences. The shorthand for us has always been, as Plumer said, telling our stories. And you're going to be doing that over the next 3 days with legislators, as we often do. But no less important is that your community members have been telling their stories. And we've captured many of those thanks to Vicki Teal Lovely and her son, Thomas Lovely. You're going to see 3 videos today during this morning program. And I hope you'll also see how amazing it was that in only a couple months, all these community members were able to be captured from all over the state. She has a spreadsheet that is multiple pages long in all her interviews that her and her son traveled all over the state and captured on video. And it was just absolutely amazing to watch. And so we're going to see the first one now. I'll tell you the 3 are resources and materials is the focus of the first one. Connectivity and technology is the focus of the second one. And then community and service is the third one that we'll be watching later this morning. So resources and materials, thanks to Vicki Teal Lovely and Thomas Lovely.
The foundation of a strong community is a strong library. Libraries loan materials and books to support lifelong learning and literacy.
For my particular community, first and foremost, the library provides us with a free service to borrow books. There's no fee. That's priceless in itself. Because right now there are so many families that are struggling to find entertainment for their children and for themselves. You can go to the library and rent a videotape or a disc, read a magazine. It's free. You don't have to pay for those things. That in itself is priceless.
You know, the ease of being able to come in, get a library card if you don't have one, and then check out a wide range of materials. And it's, you know, if people think of libraries as just having books, they haven't been to a library lately, with movies, audio books, all sorts of different ways of getting information and entertainment at the same time.
Coming to the library is her highlight. Yeah. She looks forward to it, and it's really nice because the librarians here are very good with communicating with Teddy and being patient and helping her each week find out what she wants. And she always comes with a list of materials, and they're always very helpful in satisfying her wants. Yeah. She looks forward to it.
During the pandemic of 2020, libraries continued to provide service. They made materials available to patrons through curbside pickup. For many libraries, this was a first.
And I use the library very often. I'm a voracious reader, and when the pandemic hit and the library was closed, I was in a very bad state of affairs because the library means so much to me. When we opened with curbside pickup, that was wonderful, and I find that it is the most expedient, convenient, and pleasant way to pick up reading material that we could ever have. I use the drive-up pickup very often and drop off books that have been completed, and it's just an absolute pleasure.
We're a part of a bigger library system, as you well know, and so even though our local library might have limited resources, we're connected to the web of the connected libraries, and so somebody else might have it, and we're more than familiar with how to go about and connect and get that material.
The library offers you the ability to connect to so many different libraries, and so I think that's an amazing service. I'm also a big fan of the website cafelibraries.com, which allows you to very easily, once you put your library card information in the system, be able to go in and find where books are and where books are on hold, how long the holding list is, and you can put all the material on hold. It's a fantastic service. I hope more people use it.
Wisconsin's public library systems support resource sharing between libraries through their online catalogs and delivery services. When patrons were asked what they like about their public library, the overwhelming majority answered, books.
Reading books.
Books are so important.
Books, of course, books.
I like to read a lot. That there's like some books to read. Books. And you get to read, and reading's fun. I like the books.
And I like coming here because there's like chapter books like Diary of the Wimpy Kid, Big Nate. And I usually sit down and read them. Those are probably one of my favorite books. I'm reading one in school, and it's Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul.
Came to check out books quite often. We haven't, as much as we used to. But that's something that we actually took advantage of because my kids actually do enjoy, curling up and reading a good book. They do have favorite authors and things. So, that was actually a beautiful thing.
Just absolutely stunning. If you remember the last year, prior to Legislative Day, we had all kind of grabbed our iPhones and smartphones and took a little video footage of patrons trying to collect their stories that we could then take into our meetings with legislators and that. And this, from that idea, Vicki and Thomas took this just to a whole different level. And this is just the first of 3 that we'll see today. So a big applause for Vicki and Thomas. Next, we're going to hear from 2 library champions. One has a hat trick of being a awarded library champion for Legislative Day, and the other has 2 under her belt. And they're both on the Joint Finance Committee, Representative Amy Loudenbeck and Senator Mary Felskowski. They could not be here, obviously, but they did want to participate. They've loved coming to our legislative days. So in that vein that I also just mentioned, they did grab their phone. The quality is a little rough, but again, they weren't going to miss a chance to say hello to us. So we'll watch their welcome. Well, thank you very much, Senator and Representative. That came to us just, it was either late last night or this morning, so I had not even had a chance to look at that. So I'm experiencing that with you, and that is absolutely priceless. That's the result of a lot of work that's been done over the past few years with the budget meetings and elsewhere. And we'll hear from Steve Conway later today, but he has just done an amazing job building those relationships to have those two, even though they're citizen representatives, legislators. That is a big deal to have those two on the Joint Finance Committee want to sit down and welcome us in the morning. But the biggest thing, as they said, is be yourselves and tell your stories. And that's what we hear when we have our meetings, are those personal stories and eliciting from the legislator their personal stories. Nothing works better than asking, what did the library mean to you as a kid, or what does it mean to you now as an adult or as a parent? And then you see them light up and they start telling what their local library means to them. We're going to look at another one of the videos that was done. Like I said, all the footage that was gathered together was then edited into 3 that focused on 3 different areas. And this one is connectivity and technology.
The foundation of a strong community is a strong library. Libraries provide access to the internet, PCs, and other technology to support patrons finding jobs, working, doing schoolwork, and other activities.
Our local library is so vital to our Rib Lake community, not only with checking out materials, books, DVDs, but especially being able to be a high-speed internet connection for our local community. We happen to live a couple blocks from the library, so even when it's closed, the internet is still running, and it is extremely common to see people parked outside the library with their laptops, with their phones, doing different things, and able to access the internet. You'll see people in here all the time doing homework, small business owners that are trying to uplink things, because some people don't have the internet locally by choice, but a lot of people don't have the internet around here because they can't. It's not an option out in the country around here in Rib Lake. And so they are that connection and that bridge.
A library has so many important resources. For the community standpoint, a lot of people don't have access to the internet, so they can access the internet while they're down here, or printing, faxing, copying, things of that nature.
October of 2020, our company was bought out by another company, putting me out into the workforce. So I decided to come by the library and start using the computer system here in order to do my job search. I utilized the computer by going on LinkedIn, Indeed.com, ZipRecruiter, posting my resume there, and I received quite a few responses from different employers that was interested in my background. And it resulted in my receiving an opportunity to interview by using the laptop systems here, utilizing Zoom meetings. I was going to go to meetings as well as Microsoft Office team meetings, utilizing the computer.
During the pandemic of 2020, libraries stepped up and helped their communities stay connected by providing internet service, a place for students to do homework, wireless printing, socially distanced computers, and remote assistance.
It was tremendous help because school had to close and my daughter had to do work on the computer. My server around my house, it was too slow, we couldn't do anything. So we had to come here every single day, like 4 or 5 hours a day. And my daughter is a straight A student. If we didn't have Wi-Fi here, she would get all Fs. and that is tremendous plus. So she got all A's. So we were really happy with that.
So during the pandemic, initially during the lockdown where we couldn't come at all, they still offered Wi-Fi services. So we were able to, for myself for work, our internet at home isn't always reliable. So we would sit outside on picnic tables and things to be able to use the internet.
Wisconsin Public Library Systems support technology in libraries by providing network equipment, access to the internet through BadgerNet, PC support, and new solutions such as external wireless access points.
I bring my son here every Thursday. I figured it's a good, safe place for him to go to. And we've done a Zoom, he's done his Zoom classes, and I've used Zoom conferences or, learning through that, and I get a good signal.
Most recently, we have been playing outside every day after school. When I pick up 2 of my 3 kiddos, we meet here and they've been playing. I bring my laptop and I've been able to get some work done while we sit and enjoy the nice weather before it turns. And I've been able to work, like I said, while they've been playing.
Thanks again to Vicki and Thomas. You'll notice in there, in the last few years, we focused on workforce, broadband, and lifelong learning. Those have been the 3 that we've left our legislative day meeting with, and charged to the Capitol and started meeting with our legislators, and we pounded away at workforce, broadband, and lifelong learning. And you can see in each of these videos that all 3 of those are in there, and coming off of what Senator Felskowski and Representative Lauenbeck said about focusing on workforce. You saw the gentleman in there, Keith, that talked about how when he was laid off, he used the library, both the connectivity as well as the resources, as well as the physical laptops, to be able to get a job. That is a story that we've also, not incidentally, that we've also been repeating every time we've met with legislators in the last month or so, telling that story. That's the personal stories that really matter. So I know that all of you have those and have seen those in your own library one way or another. And so make sure that you think of those and then relay those on. Now we're going to move to a little bit of talking about the logistics of the appointments, what it is, the physical of getting into the virtual and those logistics, and then also the handouts. Through all of this, let's remember the words of Senator Felskowski is just be yourself. That more than anything else is the most important thing that legislators want to see. And so first is Jim Ramsey, the director of Stoughton Public Library, and he's going to talk about the appointments.
Yeah.
Hello, thanks, Nick. Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Ramsey. Like Nick said, I'm the director of the Stoughton Public Library. They normally keep me pretty behind the scenes, but this year I am here to share with you some tips for a successful appointment. So the things that I'm going to go over as I'm listening to all these great stories and inspirational, get personal stories people are sharing about their libraries. I'm thinking great, but the stuff that I have to go over is not nearly as fun, but it is important. So first I'm going to start off with some non-technical points about the meetings, and then I'm going to go into talking about the technical things that you need to know to have a successful appointment. So how did these appointments come to be? Well, just like in previous years, I reached out to every single legislator, all 132 of them. Not all of them got back to me. You can see from the appointments, there were, I believe, 10 legislators in total, in addition to the 2 vacant spots who did not get back to me. So if you don't have an appointment for one of your legislators, that's why. I've suggested you follow up with them in person. I'm sorry, not in person, over by phone or by email in the coming weeks and share the handouts with them. Okay, so some non-technical points before I get into the stuff that's different this year. As always, it's very important that you show up to the meetings that you are registered for. You have less of an excuse now, right? In the virtual environment. We understand things happen, and some of you have already let me know that you have conflicts. I appreciate that. Just know that your legislators and your colleagues are counting on you to attend the meetings that you signed up for. So we're hoping that everyone shows up to the meetings that they've been assigned. We know that realistically that won't be the case. So as an attendee, you're going to have to be flexible. If there are, for example, 3 other people assigned to the meeting that you're attending, and the meeting starts, you're the only one there, then you're it, run with it. So one thing you can do before your meetings is prepare for them by knowing how many other people are going to be attending. Is this a meeting that's just going to be you and the legislator, or you and the legislator staff? That's a different meeting in a way than a meeting with a dozen other people. So if you haven't already, find that email that WLA sent out last Friday. The subject line is "Your library legislative appointments have arrived." If you haven't already, find that email. That is the key to this whole thing working correctly. You find in that email links to 2 reports. Those reports are the list of appointments by legislator and appointments by attendee. Both of them have the links that you will need to access the remote meetings, but it's not all the information that you'll need, and I'll get to that in a second. But finding that email is key. That email also has links to the handouts in it, so you can quickly copy and paste those links into an email and send them to the legislator if they ask. Steve dropped off the paper copies of the handouts at all the legislators' offices. However, some of the legislators are still working remotely and may not have got those. So if they ask you for the handouts, you can quickly find those in that email. Don't forward them the email because it has all the links to the appointments in it. Copy and paste those links. In most cases, you are meeting not with the legislator himself or herself, you're meeting with staff. This is normal. This is the same as previous years. We schedule Library Legislative Day around this time of the year, not because we like to gamble with the weather and have a snowstorm every other year, but because the legislators are often in the Capitol during this time, which means they're often in session, or they're on the floor, or they're in caucus. So you may very well be meeting with a member of staff. So don't be surprised at that. And hey, did you know that you can look up the names of the staffers ahead of time? And that's another great way to prepare for your appointment. You go to legis.wisconsin.gov. You can click on either senators or representatives in the separate sections for the Senate and the Assembly. And you'll see an alphabetical list of all the legislators. You can click on the details link and you see the names of all of their staff members. These are the people who you will likely be meeting with today. It's not absolutely necessary, but it can be nice to know ahead of time the names of the people that you're meeting with. And I see that that Hannah is sharing some good links in the chat, so pay attention to those. So this is the last non-technical thing I will say, despite my best efforts to tell them otherwise, some staffers think that I'm attending the meeting, which is understandable since I'm the ones who contacted them. So if they ask where I am, just explain that no, he's just the one who makes the appointments. He's not going to be here. If anything changes with a last-minute cancellation or a change, I will reach out to you directly. I already have in some cases, as things have changed last minute, and they always do. That's all for the non-technical stuff. Okay. Why are these meetings in different platforms? Well, that's because for a lot of them, the Wisconsin Library Association had to set up the meeting ourselves. The legislators didn't have, the legislative offices either didn't have the capability to set up a remote meeting or they didn't have an account. These meetings are all in GoToMeeting format. However, there are many offices who wanted to set up their own appointments. Most of these are in Zoom. A couple of them are in Skype. I think one of them is just a straight phone conference, but most of them are in Zoom. So for GoToMeeting, download GoToMeeting on your device. If you haven't already, make sure it works. Check your audio settings. I assume you have GoToMeeting if you're watching this webinar, although there is the GoToWebinar platform that may be separate. I'm not real sure on that, but make sure you have the GoToMeeting app on your device or on your desktop. If you have a Zoom call scheduled, download Zoom on the device that you'll be using and create a free account. It just takes a second. And you can also set it up so your display name shows your full name and your library affiliation, which is another great little piece of virtual meeting etiquette that you'll want to know. If you can, change your display name so it says your full name and your library affiliation. So for joining the meetings, this is probably the most important part of all I'm going to say. So if you've zoned out, come on back. For GoToMeeting, the link alone should get you in. You can click on the link in the PDF documents that were in the email that WLA sent you, the reports by legislator and reports by attendee. For GoToMeeting, that should be enough to get you in. For Zoom, this is very important. For Zoom, you are going to need the passcode that is in the PDF document further down in that email from WLA. It's in the section under instructions for calling into sessions. This is very important. Even if you're not calling in and you're joining using your device or computer, you are going to need the passcode that is in that document. Because of the way the database that we use was structured, we were not able to put those passcodes in the reports, in the PDF reports that contain the link. Looks like WLA office, Hannah is linking to it right now in the chat. This is very important. You will need those passcodes from the Zoom meetings that are in that separate document. Again, Hannah is sharing it in the chat. Another note about Zoom, there were a few meetings created by offices where the meeting was created in such a way where they did not select a call-in option. Whenever possible, we try to provide a call-in option. I know not everybody's internet is robust. So if your meeting is a Zoom meeting and does not have a call-in option, and you can tell which ones these are because the passcode is alphanumeric, it has letters in it. That's the best we could do. Or we're just gonna have to roll with it. Okay, I'm almost done. Virtual meeting etiquette that you probably already know, but it's worth repeating. Obviously find a quiet place where you won't be interrupted with minimal background noise and as good of an internet connection as you can find. Mute yourself when you're not talking for larger appointments. Now, don't do this if there's only 2 or 3 of you, or if it's just you and the legislator. But for larger appointments where there are a lot of people on, mute yourself while you're not talking. Of course, try to look presentable, at least from the waist up. Those are really the kind of all-purpose virtual meeting etiquette that after doing this for almost a year, most of you probably already know. You'll encounter a wide array of different comfort levels with technology, comfort levels and competencies in these legislative offices that you're going to be visiting virtually over the next few days. That should come as no surprise to you as librarians. You're used to that. We're used to that, right? Some offices don't have webcams. So your meeting will be voice only, even if it's over GoToMeeting. You won't be able to see the staffers or the legislators. I know this isn't ideal, but we're just gonna have to do the best we can. Some other offices will inevitably fail to connect using the link, and they will use the call-in option. So again, I know it's not a lot of fun talking to multiple people when you can't see them, but again, this is the situation this year. Some offices may be late to join, so please be patient. Please wait. I would say, I mean, ideally wait the entire length of the appointment, but at least 20 minutes before you leave the call. If your legislator doesn't show up, please follow up in the coming days by phone or email. Hey, sorry, we weren't able to connect, you know, technology, blah, what can you do? And here is what I was going to talk to you about. So what to do if, when things go wrong, because with this many moving parts, there's inevitably going to be things that go wrong. Probably already have been on this webinar. So it just happens. WLA staff, Hannah and Plumer, have done a fantastic job setting all of this up. Especially Hannah has done a big lift this year to get all of these appointments, the virtual part of them, scheduled in the GoToMeeting. So with all these moving parts, with you know, over 150 attendees, 130 some appointments, things are going to go wrong. So first of all, don't panic. If the call drops, you're kicked out of the meeting, just try to connect using your device. If that fails, try to rejoin the meeting via the call-in option if it's available. Try to be as unobtrusive as you can when you rejoin the meeting. You know, like, hey, can everybody hear me? Hey, I'm back. Just unobtrusively rejoin the meeting. And if all else fails, follow up by phone call or email after the scheduled time. Phone call or email, whichever you're more comfortable with, sometime maybe later in the day or even the next day. Apologize for the inconvenience. You know, send an email with some stories about how your library has adapted, you know, in the pandemic, all the things that they were talking about in those videos and that Steve will talk about in a minute here. So, you know, you can even blame it on your lack of internet, which provides you a great segue into talking about how libraries provide access to broadband internet in areas where that's not ubiquitous. So bottom line, we want this to be a positive experience for the legislators and their staffers. So just respond to any problems like you normally would in the library in your calm, pragmatic way that you're used to. We talk a lot about flexibility and adaptability. You know, in those videos and in our talking points, we talk about how flexible we are, how adaptable we are. Well, now is your chance to show how flexible and how adaptable we are, especially when things don't go as planned. So again, if you don't remember anything else from what I just said, remember the email that you got from WLA, the one with the subject line, your library legislative appointments have arrived. That contains all of the important documents you'll need to have a successful library legislative day, including the handouts for legislators. Hannah has linked some of those in the chat here now, and that's all I have. Have fun and relax, and things will go perfectly. I know they will.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. And now you can see, all of you, you can see why WLA President Sherry Michon has singled out Jim and the work that he's been doing, not only this year, which has been extra, but for the last few years in setting up all these appointments. So let's give Jim a round of applause. And the other thing he mentioned is just maintain that same, as when you're helping somebody in the computer lab, that same calm, patient, as he said, demeanor, and chances are it's on their end, and the more patient and understanding you are, the more they'll like libraries. And so next we're going to talk a little bit about the handouts, and Pete Lawful is going to talk about those the handouts that are on the website. Usually would be in your folder that you received in the morning. They've been on the website. And along the lines of those handouts, I just want to thank the WLA Legislative Day Committee for working on those. In particular, the more detailed handouts were put together by Connie Meyer, Kathy Klager, and Chris Adams-Wendt, and with some assist from Bruce Gay, and then also Jill Fuller of Bridges. put a lot of work into these as well. So I'm going to turn this over to Pete.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. My name is Peter Luffel. I'm the director of the Wauwatosa Library, and I'm also the incoming chair of the Library Development and Legislation Committee. So I just want to also take this opportunity to thank the LD&L committee for all the work that they do for helping with library advocacy and legislation development, and also with helping plan for Legislative Day. I just want to talk briefly, and it'll be much briefer than what Jim spoke, about the handouts. In a typical year, if you'll recall, you'll come to Legislative Day, you'll get a folder which includes the handouts that you use to reference, and the legislators also receive a folder. I'm just going to quickly go through the contents of what's in those folders this year. As Jim mentioned, they've already been delivered to the legislator offices. That doesn't necessarily mean the legislators have them yet, but the offices have received them. The link to the documents was in that Friday email that Jim referenced. But basically, we have a Legislative Day instruction sheet for you that includes tips and tips for you to use in your appointments. The most important one of which is come with your library stories. We also have a document that talks about state aid overview, and this gives a quick overview of how systems help provide aid for individual libraries. We have a document for Wisconsin Library Strengthened Communities, and this talks about the benefits of libraries in promoting literacy, workforce development, and information technology. We have a Library Step Up document this year that Jill Fuller from Bridges Library System helped develop, and this is a great one-page sheet that talks about how libraries have adapted this year, whether it's with curbside pickup or other additional adaptive services. We include a library system map and a contact list. And this is important for legislators because oftentimes they know what county they're in, but they don't necessarily know what library system their constituents are in. So this is a good overview for them to quickly see what library systems their residents are in. We have also the 2021-2023 state budget priorities. And so this is a collection of one overview sheet and then 3 individual documents that talk about the overview for state aid to public library systems. This is the overarching funding that library systems receive from the state. We have a document talking about library service contracts, which talks about additional contracts for, say, UW-Madison or Milwaukee for providing additional services. And we also have a document talking about funding for Recollection Wisconsin. Now, the legislative offices have already gotten these documents, so they may have these documents already when you meet with them or their staff. It's also possible that they haven't received it yet, especially if they're working remotely. So we can refer to it, but trust me, they will be getting it eventually. So you can always send those documents to the legislators, but they will have a physical copy. Now, in a typical year, most, if not all of you, will also have your own individual documents that you give to legislators for your library and for your system. While WLA wasn't able to help facilitate the distribution of those printed materials, what we're encouraging you to do this year is you can reference those documents in the course of your meeting with your legislators and then tell them that you'll follow up by either sending it to them by email or by mail. As for me personally, what I'm doing this year is when I follow up with my legislative thank you notes, instead of doing the little card, I'll be sending an 8.5 by 11 envelope, which will include the handouts from my individual library and my library system. So that's a little quick rundown of the library handouts that we have this year.
Thank you, Peter. And a round of applause for Peter as well. And we wish you well on your ambitious rise from Library Legislative Day Chair to LD&L Chair. And who knows what heights you will go. We'll be calling you governor in no time, I'm sure. So in those handouts, you have the advantage over previous years where you would receive the folder the day of, and you would quick look through those and wonder which ones are the important ones and what do you say and what do you leave behind. You heard Peter just give you the orientation on that, but because your meetings with legislators are today, tomorrow, and the following day, you have lots of time to go to the website, get those documents. You don't have to memorize them, but just get familiar with them to get more comfortable. So there's no sweaty palms as you go in there and worrying about what you should say or shouldn't say. So go ahead and access those documents. Again, as Felskowski said, always just being yourself. Next, we're going to watch the third video done by Vicki Teal Lovely and her son, Thomas. Can never say that enough times. They're absolutely fabulous. And then after that, we'll have the legislative update and from Steve Conway. And then if you have any burning questions that you think we can address to everybody, go ahead and put those in chat, and then we'll address those as we can.
The foundation of a strong community is a strong library. For many, the library is a pillar of the community.
It's a great treasure to have a robust public library in your community. So.
Well, and when we first moved to town, this was one of the first places that really welcomed us to the community. Like, we came here and I was greeted and I updated my library card, and they gave me, I'll never forget, she gave me a packet. She's like, "We're really glad that you guys chose River Falls as your home." And I was like, that's real, huh? Like, this is, well, that's fantastic. And to be greeted by the library in a town, we feel really lucky.
During the pandemic of 2020, libraries stepped up by following public health guidelines to provide a safe environment for workers and community members. It was necessary to pivot and find new ways of providing traditional library services, such as Summer Library Program.
So we used the Beanstack app this summer and did all of the summer programs, not only for the Beloit Library, but several local libraries. But it gave us something really fun to do, challenges to do as a family, and I could just keep track of it on my phone after we read every book and met every milestone.
Virtual book groups.
Many of us are older people, and we might go out, but we don't go out a lot. And the very fact that we can Zoom together, I've seen people I haven't seen all summer, but I see them once a month on Zoom. And we don't do a lot of catching up because it's the library book club as opposed to a private book club. But nonetheless, it's great to see their faces. We laughed furiously over the book, Furiously Happy. We just had a great time. I don't know if you read that. It is a bizarre book, but we were just really literally laughing and having a wonderful time on Zoom. And that's something that wouldn't have occurred without the library setting it up. It was a library book club, and helping us with the technologies.
Virtual meetings. Mobile hotspots for patrons to check out. Virtual story programs.
It's so nice to see you.
Take and make crafts and activities. Story walks. And even drive-in movies.
I think our library has been really great at showing us that even when everything is changing, there's still ways that they're able to adapt. And even if the doors aren't open, they can still be open and providing service to the community.
Wisconsin Public Library System supports services and library staff through grants, training, kits for programming and digitization, research and development, technology, and continuing education.
And I remember the librarian came outside and handed me the book, and I remember saying, "I'm so sorry to be doing this to you. I'm sorry you have to be working right now and interrupting you while you're trying to probably wrap up your work so you can close the library." And she said, "We're not closing the library. We want to be open. We need to be open in this time." And at the time when she said that, I don't think I really had ever thought of the library as a place of service to a community. What they bring to a community is so much larger than just the materials you check in and out. She made it very clear that what they saw themselves as were so vital to the success and the continued health of this community that it just struck me so much as during the pandemic, as they were talking about essential workers and things like that, and everyone's talking about doctors and grocery store workers and truck drivers, and certainly all that is true. But the way she said it that day about we need to be here spoke volumes to how important the work is that's done at the library.
A third and absolutely fantastic. That one really focuses on what our message is today and going forth in these legislative meetings is that we have been open. I often say that the first responders were the heroes last spring. And then when it came time to summer, it was really the educators' turn to step up. And certainly libraries have done that. Doors open. The message has not always gotten through to the legislators. Some of our library champions have told us that, and they themselves are fighting, taking on that advocacy role within the Capitol and with their own colleagues, because they've told us. But we know that the open is really, really what resonates, as well as the workforce and the broadband connectivity and technology that we've been providing. So 3 great videos. I'll turn it over to Steve. I just want to say one more thing. I don't know if anybody out there did not did not note down that opening couple and their welcome package. If you don't have one, that is something that to me, just we are starting right away. Maybe shameful that we haven't been doing all along. Maybe all of you have, but it seems like a very easy and yet a very impactful way to welcome people to community and make them lifelong advocates and supporters of what we do. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Conway, who we can't say enough about taking us from, let's see, which way am I going here? Here to here or here to here? And so much of what we've been seeing today and talking about is thanks to him and how he has built us up as an organization and certainly in our advocacy role. So Mr. Conway.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to start and end with the same concept of I want you to enjoy the experience today or tomorrow or Thursday as you're going through with it. And I'm actually coming with you from Beloit Public Library. And apparently you can detect a clip-on bow tie. I happen to wear one. I knew I was going to be in Nick's office today, but apparently clip-ons are not acceptable after junior high school. So I had to take it off. But anyway, moving forward, that was my start. Yep, that was my start. All right. So I want everyone to really enjoy the experience. There really are no wrong words. There's no wrong actions, things that you can do. In the past, everyone was almost afraid of like what hand do I use to open the door? You know, it was all these do's and don'ts, and everyone's just a little kind of freaked on that. We've really shifted from that, and everyone knows now to go in, just tell your story, tell who you are, be proud of really everything you've done over this year, and that's what today is going to be about. So to bring everyone up to speed too, for this budget cycle, it actually started a year ago for our team. And because everyone thinks it's just kind of like now is the budget, everything's ready to go. But in order to be ready for the budget and in the actual budget, we actually had to start a year ago. And it was about now that we had to look to see what did we do with the funding we got in the past? Did we do what we said we were going to do? And so that's because we're always saying we're going to put it towards these different functions. And so we had to make sure that that actually happened, which it always does, but we always have to check on that to make sure. And then I really have to figure out what is our next ask, right? Because we have to decide what are we going to ask for this year? And it's a lot of different factors that you work with. In the past, we always had to look to who was in the governor's office, all the different things that way, what funding we had, what our base was, all these different things going on. So we start actually a year ago. And so we're having Governor Evers in the governor's office obviously was a very, very positive for us. He's very fond of libraries. He understands what we do. So that was actually very helpful to us. So we actually came out a bit bold, I will say. When we looked at the funding that we wanted to get for our library systems, we were a little bit more bold than we had been in the past years. But it wasn't that it was only because Governor Evers was there, it's because all the work that you have done and all the efforts that you've put in made it easily justifiable that we could actually make these requests. And as Nick likes to put it, we're only asking for incremental requests. So we basically say, we ask for a little bit, and then we show that we use it correctly, and then we ask for a little bit more, and that's just been our pattern. So we felt very comfortable with it. Then, as everyone knows, COVID hit. And so when you're in the middle of this whole thing, we're working with DPI for the budget, and here we've asked for this a little bit more, kind of a bolder request, and all of a sudden we're getting, they didn't even know what their budget was going to be. In the middle of COVID, I mean, we're looking at open, close, all these different things like that. The government was looking, what is going to be our income? What actual funding are we going to have coming in if all these businesses are closing down, all the stuff's happening, all these things going on? And every department was basically said zero increase. I mean, even with this going on, it was like zero. Do not bring anything more. It's just zero. And we were actually above zero. And so we had to make a decision, and we're working back and forth. But we basically kept our communication in very strong communication with Dee, who is our connection to DPI. She's a wonderful She's a legislative liaison inside DPI, and she just does a phenomenal job. So we kept our relationship and communication with her and all the DPI staff, and they were actually okay with our number. We did not have to change what we did, basically because of all what you've been doing. And so that allowed us to say, no, libraries are worth it. We know the funding that you're asking for is real. We know it's fair, and we know what you're going to do with it. So again, you guys, it's because of all what you do that we actually kept the same number. Now that, this is actually when it was at its worst. And then, the numbers are not as strong as they were what we thought they'd be, but they're not as horrible as they thought they're going to be too. So we're actually right in that process. So that's where we were at. So we basically put our numbers in, and the DPI budget, from what we can tell, is going to be, it's coming out today. So we're estimating it's going to be really what we thought we put in our request would be. So on our side too, obviously at LDL, we have a it's a big committee, but all dedicated people, which has been fun. But this is the first year we have a special committee that helps us at this time of the year. And what it is, it's our budget committee. Or I don't even know what the technical term is. It's just my budget team that comes in. And these are really dedicated people that understand that it's going to take a little extra time. I have to go all these meetings, I have to be at the Capitol. It's a big ask that we make of this team. And we've had, I would say, a pretty consistent team for the last 6 years of everyone in their positions. This was our first budget year where our top two, we had 2 co-chairs that have been to all these meetings had retired. And so we're gonna, there's gonna be this, well, we luckily had a very peaceful transition of power. All right, there was not a lot of issue. We did have a peaceful transition of power here, but it's not easy to fill the shoes of Connie Myers and Kathy Klager. And actually, I want to say Kathy Pletcher too, because these dedicated women were truly amazing at all these meetings. You're doing your meeting today, but when we go in on this budget team, it's very precise. It's like a play. Everyone has a specific line. Everyone has a specific thing. We have all these different things we have to get out. And those 3 amazing women were just phenomenal to our team. And obviously we were going to lose them due to retirement this year. And so we did have this peaceful transition of power over to our new chair, Peter, who just took the reins and just flew. I mean, he's awesome. So again, it's because of our depth. It's our bench. It's all these people, because a lot of you are starting out what you're doing here today. You're going in, you're feeling comfortable, you're going in working with these legislators. So to get on our committee and actually move up to that level where you get on a budget team, you pretty much have the skills to do it. And we also make it easy for you to do. So we have a new team this year. Obviously, Nick has stayed on, which has been great. And Plumer, again, as an executive director, to take this much interest in one committee, one effort, one part, because I look at all the stuff he has to do for your entire organization. I don't even know how he does it. He's an amazing person. But he actually goes to all the meetings with us too. So he puts a lot of time in this. So you really have to acknowledge the work that Plumer has put into this. And then we also have Chris Adam Wendt, who, again, not only does she do the stuff with Jim and help with that, but her knowledge and resource of everything really in this whole legislative world has been invaluable to our legislative team. Jim joined us this year. And again, all these first timers, like, I don't know if I'm going to say something. I know it's going to be, I don't know how I'm going to do. And then our first meeting, he's just, boom, taking it. It's like he's been doing it for 30 years. And then Vicki joined us. She's been great to help us with it too. And then Mark Ahrens has joined. I think, Nick, that's pretty much, all that's on that team now. So I don't forget anybody, because you always want to do that. But I think that's what I think we have on there, because we had some come in late to help us. But that's our team. And what we've been doing is we've actually been meeting. So we start our meetings earlier. Normally, we have them done by this time of year. So when you go in, we've met with all the joint finance. We've met with everybody going that way. But this year has just been challenging just to get meetings. And some are in, some are out, virtual, all the different things going on. So it's been a challenge to even get into the Capitol. It's, the Capitol's actually shut down, except on special days. So I always they always wonder how I get in. They always see me in there, and I find my little ways to get in, but it's just not been that easy. So we still have a few more to go. And actually we have some tomorrow. So our team is actually gonna be meeting tomorrow while you're meeting too. So there may be this back and forth that Jim had to work with too on the scheduling. It's like, no, not your local, this is the other one. So again, Jim did a phenomenal job on that. So that's kind of where we are on that. Now, when we look at each session, because I get in front of you and we kind of explain what's happening. So every session that we have is different. And that's our position at the beginning, where we are, what we're starting with, what our goals, what our strategies are. We actually have to adapt to each session. In the past, we actually started, Governor Walker did not put us in the strongest position to start in his actual budget. So we really had to rely a lot of the work at JFC, the Joint Finance Committee, and the members of that committee to get the additional funding. So we actually started at one spot and we had to find ways. I call it predator and prey. It's really what it is. We are very polite predators, but we were basically out there trying to find money from other places that we could bring to our bucket. And we did it very politely, as librarians always do. But and one of the keys to that was one of the champions that you saw earlier today. And I'll never forget that day sitting in the joint finance meeting where it was then Representative Pelskowski came over and basically it was in the meeting, actual meeting going on. She said, "It's happening now. I'm going to do it now." I'm like, "You're doing what now?" She says, "It's happening now." So I watched her and she went over and she basically brought in Senator Mark Line and Representative Romaine Quinn and looked at him and said, "I know you have this bucket of money over here and I know it's very valuable to you, but I'm asking you if you can put it into this library bucket right now." And they agreed. And then she went up, made the motion, and that's how we got the first millions that actually shifted over in that area. So she believes in us. Not only does she believe in us, she's one of those champions that actually will do the necessary steps to help us. And the same thing with Representative Amy Loudenbeck. Both these two champions, and you saw they had their, I actually could not hear for whatever my computer, I couldn't hear them, but I'm hoping what they said was really their affinity for libraries and what the libraries do, and then how much for us, having both them on joint finance is a key, has been a key, and will continue to be a key for our success in this entire process dealing with getting the money into the final budget. So this time we're basically, hopefully the budget comes out today. All expectations are we'll have the numbers that we're very comfortable with and we're hoping with. So our meetings right now have been different. In the past, we always had to look for ways we could increase. Now we're basically saying we're comfortable, we're very happy where we are, and please, again, that's where others will be trying to take our little pot of gold. So we're basically going to say, this is ours, please leave us alone. And I'm hoping getting through JFC that because of all the work that you do and all the work you continue to do throughout the year will allow us to maintain that. So that's kind of our goals inside of that. So your work today, again, I cannot tell you how important it is, but I want you to understand, we've talked about this many times, is tone. And this one, I'm bringing this up right away in the beginning because it's so important this year, especially because obviously, as Nick said, this has been a different year, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. And I want you to be proud, really proud. I want the tone to be extremely proud of what you accomplished this year. Because working with you over all these years, what I found, this is not a criticism, but you guys like perfection. You really look for perfection. And what I notice is you tend to see those things that are not perfect. And there'll be a focus on like, well, yeah, I did take care of 400 people here, but there are 2 over here that somehow I didn't quite get exactly how I wanted to get. And there'll be the focus on the 2, which is, I love that you do that. I do get it because you want everyone to understand it. But I really want you to step back and think of what you actually accomplished during this pandemic. Because I know all of you, when this pandemic hit, I know in your right top drawer, you just pulled out the top drawer and in there was this folder saying, pandemic. Here's exactly, well, Nick, I was rifling through your doors. Nick, yours in the bottom left. You've never quite followed the team. It's supposed to be in the top right. Top right is where the pandemic, if you have a pandemic, what to do, folder sits. So basically, everyone basically thought, all right, I have a pandemic. I have all this stuff going on. And as Nick said, I think the hardest thing for every single one of you was to actually physically close those doors because it's just not what you do. It went against everything you believe you needed to do. However, it's just what had to happen. And so I want you not to focus on that. I want you to focus on how you pivoted. I want you to focus on how you changed, how you focus on everything that you did. And every one of you did it. And this is the library systems. I mean, if you didn't know how important your library system was before, I think they all came into focus right now because what I heard is basically my library system helped me get with all my other libraries. And they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? All these different things. And it brought together a community of like, what can we do? What are we as a team going to do to get us through this whole thing and make sure we're still serving our communities? And so I need you to focus on that, on the pivot, on everything you did, because a lot of times they're going to ask you where you open and you're in your head going to go, oh, there were 2 days that somehow I didn't have my physical doors open. You say, well, I guess I wasn't open 100% of the time. No. So the term open doesn't mean your physical doors. That's not what we're looking for. When we say were you open, it doesn't mean my physical doors were shut, because a lot of times those might have had to been shut because of city ordinances. There's all the different things that were happening on a statewide level. Everything was being closed down and shut down, but you found a way to provide services. So when they say were you open, I don't want you to think your physical doors. I want you to think, was I providing services to my community? And again, it could have been Beaver Dam has, and I found this out through this whole thing. Beaver Dam was the very first, I think, library in the nation, maybe the world, to actually use mail, that sent out books through the mail. And that was something I didn't know. I've always finding out unique things about all of you, but they went right to their system of sending out in the mail. So they were actually providing services from boom right away. A lot of you went to curbside. A lot of you did all these different things. All of a sudden, you also noticed your electronic services were just going up. All these different things there. So when the term open, because this is a big thing, and I obviously my computer was not allowing me to hear what Senator Felskowski and Representative Laubenbeck were saying, but they're our friends. So they met with us. Actually, they met with me a lot. And one of the key things was obviously understand this term open, because there's a lot of their colleagues were saying, is my library even open? Are they providing services? So again, it's not the physical doors, guys. It's really the services you were providing, which I know all of you did in some way, some form, some shape. That's what you need to focus on that. The other term that's going to come up is the term usage. And what happens is, again, you have a very specific concept, and not that you guys get technical or you get into very deep weeds. I've never seen that happen here, but there is a tendency to say, well, my actual usage, and it goes down this whole trail of, I don't know, 6 people over here and 3 over there. There's a thing that you have with that, but that's not what they're talking about with the term usage, not your term. It's same word, but what they're looking at is really how many people are using your services. So again, open means that you are providing services, and then usage just means where a lot of people coming in, where they're asking for the services that you provide, not a technical thing that you were looking for. So we found that out in a couple of different our meetings. There was one person, one of the representatives on Joint Finance wanted to know what the usage was. And again, my team started going down the very technical thing to get me the data, which I love. But I'm like, no, that's not what he's asking for. He again wanted to know, because he thought, and I truly believe it, if your doors were not physically open and people couldn't come in and out, were you finding another way to get the service to them? And was that service increased? Was there some things where people still using your services? So that's a technical thing, but if that does pop up, just, you don't have to go down your usage like 16 people did this and what your normal thing is. It's really just, again, just pivot right to, yes, our usage was, we were providing all these services, and here are the services that we did provide through the time when we could not have maybe our physical doors open, but we were actually open. The other thing I wanted to mention too is the handouts. So in the handouts, there's all this technical information dealing with the budget request itself. So you'll see in there what we have, what we're asking for, and you can go, ooh, because I told you we're being a little bit more bold this year. So we are being a little bit bold with it, but it also has the different contracts, all the different things in there. That's not something you have to go through. That's actually something that we're going through, our budget team's going through, but we want you to have that information and work with it. I'm not really asking you to focus on that. I'm asking you to focus on your personal stories. What's happening in your library, what's happening in that space of your constituents with that representative. You have the information. If it goes there, you don't have to go deep. You don't have to pretend, or you don't have to feel like you have to give that information to them. If they do start asking a lot about that, just let either myself or Peter know, and we will circle back, and our team will go in and work with that specific legislator on that details of that information. But it's not something you feel that you have to go in there and try and understand, or, why are you asking for this, or all those different things. Just, just say, what we'll do is, let's tell about our local, and what I'll do is we'll have our other budget team come in and talk with you. So that's a thing, so you can help you, but you have it. Now, the other thing with with these meetings, the only thing I will say is watch your time, because that's sometimes what happens. I know a lot of you are going to use videos this year. There's going to be some other things going through with it. Watch your time. So whatever your timeline is, I'm always doing this in our meetings. I always respect their time. So if we're meeting from 10 to 10:30, we're done at 10:30, because that's just the way it is. Now, if the legislator would like to go longer and they're making the meeting go longer, you can go with it. Let them know, say, look, our meeting's only 10:30. If you'd like to go longer, we're glad to be here and help you and do that stuff. So you're respectful of their time. If they want to go longer, that's fine. But us, we always are respectful. We always want to make sure we do the right thing. So when our time is up, let's make sure our time is up. So, kind of watch your time, watch how you give your presentation and stuff like that. But understand they have other meetings to go to. Their days are just packed. And if you put them behind, or if you shift it over, they love you, but it also makes it harder for them what they're doing. So respect their time. If they want to go longer, they can. We talked about pride. And again, I think I'd just like to end it with enjoy the experience. this is one of those things where everything you're going to say today, you saw the videos, everything you did over this pandemic, be proud of what you did over that pandemic. Be proud that you actually stayed open to provide all these services in amazing circumstances that were just tough for any business or any type entity to do. And it's looking good for us. I mean, we've been meeting with all the joint finance. Just give you an idea where we are with everything. Obviously, the governor and DPI have been very supportive of us. Every joint finance meeting that we've done so far has been very supportive of us. We've not had any of them that say, no, this doesn't make sense. I don't think you should do what you're doing. So, and it's all because of the work that you do. And it's always fun for me too, to walk in all these legislators' offices and see Libraries Transform posters on their walls. So we're going to continue that process, and they do love their libraries. And yesterday I did go to every single office in the Capitol, and the ones that were there, I said, it's your favorite day. You know it. It's Library Day. And I would hand them, and they all smiled. And I handed them their packet. I said, they're going to be calling you. We wish we could be here in person, but we just can't this year. So it's going to be virtual. So work with us if there's any issues. So they're already prepped if there may be a technical issue, stuff like that. The Democratic offices were primarily, their staffs were not in. There were a few that were open, but primarily they will have their packet under the door. So you can just say, look, it's in your office. It's been handed off to you. If you want, your staff can get it and get it to you if you need to. But every single office has a packet. So I think, again, enjoy the experience. If you have any questions, Nick, this is usually when we take those, if there's any chat, things like that, but that's my report for this year. And actually, I want to end with, it's an honor to work with all of you. So I truly appreciate the experience and the ability to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
A big round of applause for Steve and his work. Steve, you had mentioned, oh, I'm sorry, Jim, do you have something?
Can I jump in here real quick? I'm sorry. I just have to slightly contradict one thing that Steve said about the appointment times. I'm sorry, Steve.
Whoa.
I'm glad you're all the way in Beloit and I'm in Stoughton.
I know.
Don't thank you, Steve. No, everything Steve said is correct. The only thing I wanted to slightly correct is about the time limits for the appointments. So if you are in a go-to-meeting appointment, it's important. It's important that you abide by the half-hour time limit, and you may even have a room monitor popping in and saying, "Hey, time's up," because the license that go-to-meeting account is set up on is needed for, and oftentimes, not always, but in a lot of cases, is needed for a meeting immediately following. So if your meeting ends at 10:30, it's important to wrap up by 10:30. Especially important if you're using a go-to-meeting link. If you're using a Zoom link, then it's a little more loosey-goosey. You can, kind of play it by ear and see what read the room. But yes, please abide by that half hour, especially for the meetings that are set up in GoToMeeting, because the license is needed for the next meeting. So thanks. That's all I'll say. Sorry, Steve.
Nope, I agree with you. I'm just used to in-person. This whole virtual world is very, as you can imagine, very difficult for me.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to mention, is that usually we, and I almost said it and then realized that's right, it's virtual, is usually we kind of gather outside in the hallway before the meetings, and we sort of say, who wants to say, not getting a script, but just kind of get a feel for, is everybody going to have their chance to speak? And because what can happen is if you don't have your chance and you've been holding it in, and then all of a sudden the legislator is getting up to say thank you, and then comes a 5-minute the thing that the person had been wanting to say. So it's going to be a little tough. You may not be able to. Everyone may not be able to say what they want. It's the way it is, and so just kind of go with the flow and wing it and pop in when you need to or when you have the opportunity. I'll ask Steve a couple more questions and we can, but winging it a little bit, Hannah, can you bring the 6 of us that have spoken throughout this? And then Hannah, are you able to ask any of the questions that you've seen in chat, or any of the 6 of us that have been watching that? I have not been able to obviously keep an eye on that, but if there are any questions, and then any of us can answer that. Steve, talk just for a second about, again, about Felskowski and our early meetings with her, and just that the messages that she, again, it was that be yourself. And then also kind of what she focused on. She focused on the open, she focused on the workforce and those kinds of things. Very positive, I mean, open is really, if anyone asks, were you closed? The answer is just start always in your mind, we were open, and that's the first words out, and then you're gonna force yourself to be able to say with our digital or whatever it is. But just on that a little bit more, if you have anything more.
Sure. Again, it's the relationship we have. We were actually able to meet with Representative Felskowski this summer, and she was very helpful. We all drove down to Beloit and met with her and talked with the different things, and she was very, very kind in giving us some of the different, I want to say talking points, but basically different themes that she was hearing, and that was helpful to us because it fit. It's stuff we knew, but it was actually, we didn't know how much emphasis there would be on each section of it. And same thing with me, we met early with Senator Felskowski, and she was the same way too. Here's some different things that she's hearing. Here's some different things that would help us. I mean, they truly love libraries, so there's things that they're working with. And I agree with you, Nick, because a lot of times, again, you'll focus on those 2 days you might have been closed, or it might have been 2 months. It doesn't matter. Your doors might have been closed, but you were not. And that's the key. So when they say, and you may hear this, you probably will hear this, did you have to close? And if you say yes, because you want to say immediately, yes, we did close, you're thinking your front doors. But I like how Nick said it, say, instead of just saying, yes, we closed, you say, you can actually pivot it and say, we've been open the whole time. We've had to alter and pivot and use different ways to get information to our services to our constituents, but we've always been open on that aspect of it. And I think you have to be honest, and if you truly were closed for a couple of days and stuff like that, where there was just no services, nothing happening, then just say, look, out of our control, we were forced to actually do that in that time period. But immediately, as soon as we could, based on city ordinances or whatever it may be, we were back providing these services. So again, I think that's the key we want to work with. Now, the other is the workforce development. In a lot of the Republican offices, this is important to them. And a lot of them don't understand all the things that we do. And so there's going to be a great need. There's a lot of people that were displaced through this pandemic. There's a lot of stuff happening that way. And libraries are going to be a key source for getting the information. So our budget team's been talking about all the different things we help with resumes. Peter does a great job of talking about how he has a system where they actually critique when they're doing interviews. They do an interview and these people help them say, you should say this, do these different things. So there's all these programs that they didn't even know libraries were helping with. Nick has a wonderful story about this gentleman that was in his library for 6 months and just kept going the same computer. And then finally that day he came up and asked Nick, you know, I need this for a job interview. And Nick was gracious and made sure that this person actually had the access to the internet to do a Zoom interview, and he got the job. I mean, those are stories that everyone they immediately smile because they know that you're going beyond just checking a book out. You know, you're going beyond all the things that they may think, well, that's what libraries do. You know, everything you're surrounded with becomes normal to you, but it may not be normal to them. A lot of these legislators, their last maybe interaction was when they were kids in high school or something like that. And, you know, I go way back to Edgerton back in the 60s, you know? And so they may not know all the different things that you're doing with workforce development. They may not know all the things you're doing with broadband. They may not know all the different things that you're doing inside your libraries that are actually providing services. So those are the stories that you need to focus on.
Yeah, and what Steve referred to there was letting that individual take a laptop home. So some of you may already do that, but our policy was you know, we don't check out laptops. And so when he came, it was 7:30 the next morning to a Zoom interview. And after a conversation, just said, you know what, let's do it. Take the information that we need. So again, some of you may already do laptops, but there may be other areas of service that a policy is in the way of providing that vital service. And certainly during any time like the last year, as you know, I mean, we all make our own decisions, but it is a time to say, let's set that aside and focus on the individual. And that becomes a powerful story for our funders, whether at the legislature or whether locally, of how we've helped people within our community. So
I agree.
So Hannah, did you have, I don't know if I'm asking too much, but did you have see any questions in chat?
There are not any questions in chat that you need to answer. Thanks for asking.
All right.
We are getting good at.
Okay, good, covered all the bases. Maybe Steve, one more thing on and you said it's largely for when we're in those offices with those budget, but again, those handouts and those 3 areas with systems, the contracts, and then the Recollection Wisconsin. If you want to just kind of talk through that, you do a nice, very high level when we're in with the legislators. If you want to share that with us.
Sure, I can do that. So if they look, again, they don't quite, you know intimately what our funding sources are. They may not. Members on Joint Finance will. They happen to be your representative or your senator. They will know it. But all the others, they get, I mean, they're going everything from, you know, how many dogs you can own all the way up to, you know, tax increment. I mean, they get all this information coming in. So the more top, really high level that you can make it, that they can understand it, makes it easier on that aspect. So when you look, you say the funding is for systems. And so this is the request that we're making for library systems. And you can basically say, this is how systems help my personal library. And some of the different things, you give them one or two examples for that. Then you look down and say, these are the other contracts that are in the budget that we also fund. And like this one here this contract is for the School for the Blind. And I always give my personal story about my grandpa. I mean, it was truly he was 97 years old. He could not see. He was almost blind, but he could still sort of hear. So his only interconnection with the world was the newspapers, the Janesville Gazette, that he would get on this little disc from the School for the Blind. So it's amazing how these things can transform people's lives. So if you have any examples with that, that works really well too. And the last one we're talking about is Recollection Wisconsin. Now, if you remember last year or last session, we tried to get them funding in the budget. They came to us kind of late in the process, and we almost made it. But it's just a wonderful group. They just do amazing products that they produce. So this year we actually went to DPI very early and asked them, can you include them into the budget? And then and so what that does is basically, hopefully they will actually have an allocation in the budget this year. And all you have to say is, if there's an allocation in there, it's like 300,000. So it's, again, these are numbers that they're very easy to work with. Say this is very valuable. It's going to be great for a lot of our communities. This is where, you know, a lot of times we get collections in and we can digitize. And Jim does a great story about, you know, Stoughton, and that all of a sudden he's got people from Norway now because of this digitization are trying to figure out what's happening in Stoughton. So it's a great thing. No idea what that was when we mentioned Stoughton. So.
You were hacked by Sweden.
I could have been.
So if nothing else, I know that meetings are going to be starting at 11 o'clock. There are some meetings, so we will let you go ahead and get started on those. Again, I want to thank Plumer and Sherry and Jim and Peter and Steve for you know, participating today. Obviously, all the work that's done, all of WLA, but more importantly, everything that all of you are doing and have been doing during this last year. I would highly recommend that you go to the WLA website and take a look at the videos. They have now been posted on the WLA website. The 3 videos that we saw today. I mean, you should all be extremely proud of the work that has been done. Steve's been using the word pivot, and I think that's exactly what we did, and we were well prepared for it. So take a look at those videos. They're also a great source of talking points, and then think of your own stories. So go forth, have fun, and let us know if you have any issues or questions. And hopefully we'll see you soon, and good luck.